What's up, guys? Lance the Obscure Movie Guy coming to you again with four awesome things to watch in lieu of everything else that's going on in the world. And that is, of course, right now, if you can watch anything, as the country continues to be under, freaking sub-zero temperatures across most of the country. Texas has obviously been hit really hard, and my thoughts go out to them. I know there's a lot of people out there without power, without heat, and government's kind of taking a shit on them. Their electric bills are out of control. The utility companies are just raping people with thousands and thousands of dollars in charges, and it's just out of control. So, but if you're tired of hearing about all that, I got four things for you guys to watch. And today's going to be definitely off the cuff. This is going to be for all my nerds, my geeks, my cosplayers, my Comic-Con folk out there. And most of them have probably already seen all these. So really, it's a notch to them. I'm a nerd, I'm a geek, whatever you want to call it. I love comic books. I love comic movies. And a lot of these guys have probably already seen some of this stuff. But today we're going to talk about fan films, which are done by fans, for fans, and really, in a lot of cases, do a much better job than what Hollywood can give us. So, I mean, if you guys go to YouTube and just type in the search bar fan film, you're going to get thousands and thousands of fan films, anything that anybody wants to cover, from comic books to Star Wars to Predator fan films, Jokers, Darth Vader's, everything that you've ever thought of about comic books and science fiction and fantasy. There's a fan film for it out there, and like I said, in a lot of cases, it's done better than what Hollywood has been able to provide for us. I mean, you can just ask anybody that watched X-Men Apocalypse. Apocalypse doesn't look like Apocalypse, okay? That was crap. Hollywood screwed it up, and anybody that's ever been to a Comic-Con who saw an Apocalypse cosplay could tell you that's better than what Hollywood gave us. And a lot of times Hollywood doesn't stick to the source material, and they want to do whatever's going to give them the big bucks in return. And unfortunately, a lot of us are suckers, and we want to go see what Hollywood has provided us in the form of a movie. And most of the times they don't get it right. The MCU has been done pretty well. DC, unfortunately, can't get their shit together. And hopefully the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League will give us a little bit of justice for DC, but most of it's been not great over the years. Fantastic Four has been very hit and miss. They've tried rebooting it a couple times. They're talking about rebooting it again, and they just can't get it right. But enough about that nonsense. Let's talk about what you should be watching. And the first one I'm going to kick it off with, a lot of people have seen. In fact, if you go to YouTube and look it up, 47 million views, and it is Kung Fury. And it is one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. It's 30 minutes long. It was done by a guy named David Sandberg. I had to look that up. I don't have a whole lot of information on these things, but David Sandberg apparently was a director in Sweden who did TV commercials and decided to write this very obscure script. And the beauty of a lot of these things is that they're done out of their own pocket, or in the case of Kung Fury, it was done through a GoFundMe page where he asked for $200,000 to come up with this 30-minute film, and he ended up getting like $630,000 from GoFundMe, and he was just short. Obviously, he set out another goal of $1 million. If he could get $1 million, he would have done like a full-length motion picture. But he got $630K. Came out with 30 minutes of amazing cinematography. Basically, Kung Fury is the most ridiculous thing you will ever watch. And it is mindless entertainment, and that is exactly what the world needs right now. And it comes out of the mind of Sandberg, who, I don't know, he must have like the imagination of a 5-year-old. It's so awesome. Basically, Miami-Dade police detective in the 80s. He gets bit by a cobra and struck by lightning at the same time to give him kung fu powers, and goes on to avenge his partner's death that was killed by a red ninja. And it's just too much fun. He goes back in time to learn kung fu. ends up having to fight Hitler and the Nazis, gets a new partner in the meantime who is a Triceratop, and he's a police officer. Clearly his name is Triceratops, and it's amazing to watch. And you got to hand it to Sandberg with the limited budget that he had. Most of the filming was done on green screen at his office in Sweden. You know, it's funny, at the time of filming, he only had one police uniform. So when you see the guys walking in the police station, he literally had to shoot one guy in a police uniform walking that way, take another shot of another guy going in a different direction, and then overlay them on each other so it looks like there's a lot of people in the police station when there's not. And they had to do the same thing with a massive kung fu sequence where he fights a bunch of Nazis. Basically, he filmed himself doing the kung fu moves, acting as if he was attacking somebody, and then had to overlay that onto another shot of the Nazis who acted like they were having the crap beat out of them, put it together, and it looks like it's an awesome fight. Nods to that. It was awesome. I love everything about the 80s. I love the 80s genre. I love the 80s look that they did with this. David Hasselhoff even did the official soundtrack for it with True Survivor, which was awesome. And just everything about it is amazing. Kung Fury, look it up. You will not be disappointed. It's 30 minutes long, and it's totally worth the watch. It's unbelievable. Next one I want to talk about is Static Shock. There was a fan film done, written by David Kirkman in 2019, just called Static, and it was about Static Shock. Now, if a lot of people aren't familiar with Static Shock, he is a superhero with electric powers. He's not very old as far as a comic book character goes. You know, Batman, Superman, they go back to like the 30s and 40s, but Static Shock, I think, was introduced in like 1993. He had a short-lived but very loved animated series in the late 90s. And there's been a lot of talk about trying to make a motion picture, a full-length motion picture, Static Shock, in Hollywood, but they just haven't been able to put it together. There's also been talk about trying to get him incorporated into the CW Arrowverse on the Black Lightning TV show, but unfortunately that still hasn't happened either. But he's a really loved character. Teenager Virgil gets superpowers, controls electricity. It wasn't, you know, when they originally started to do the 2019 fan film, it was only supposed to be like 10 minutes long. It was done on like a $3,000 budget. And David Kirkman, who seems to be a really interesting guy, got involved and wrote out a 45-minute, you know, script to do this whole fan film. It wasn't exactly perfect. There's a couple of areas in the film that could have used a little bit of a rewrite or reworking, if you will. But the cool thing about Kirkman is that he's got a YouTube page that has basically a whole bunch of his work, and a lot of it is kind of like a David Kirkman universe. Some of it actually goes and ties with Static and some of the other stuff that he's done. But Static, it actually opened at Netflix. I think it was Netflix theaters. They've got their own theater in like St. Louis or something like that. Or it might have had a theatrical release, like a small theatrical release in St. Louis. That's where Kirkman is from. But it gained a lot of traction. It's got a couple million views on YouTube. I think it's got 1 million views actually. But it gained a lot of traction in 2019, and it was pretty well done. And again, Static Shock is a very beloved comic book character. I enjoyed the cartoon when I was a kid, and I really wish they would be able to get something done, you know, on a more professional level. And then the last thing I want to talk about, this is actually two parts. Joker Rising, which was a fan film done in 2013, and it was followed up by The Clown Prince in 2019, written by the same people. Alec Gerhardt, I think, wrote it and directed both of those from his production company. But full-length featured, hour-and-a-half long movies, very well done. Joker Rising is a completely different take on anything about the Joker that's ever been done. The cool thing about the Joker is that there really isn't a origin story for the Joker. Nobody really knows who he is. Nobody really knows where he's from. The only thing that's ever really touched on that was The Killing Joke back in the 80s, where they had kind of touched on what could have been. You know, he was a failed stand-up comic, lost his wife, lost his job, got caught by the cops. He used to be Red Hood, lost his baby or whatever it was. So that was really the only one that ever really touched on any type of real actual origin story of what it was. Now, Batman 1989 with Tim Burton, he was Jack Napier, but the source was still kind of the same. He falls into the vat of acid, gets turned white. Jack Nicholson is the Joker, did a good job as that. But Joker Rising is a completely different take. The Joker's actually played by a very unknown actor called Dylan Hobbs. But for the most part, in Joker Rising, he plays Cyrus, who is just a low-level gangster, working with a crime syndicate. And they touch very lightly on Batman in Joker Rising. But it's kind of cool because a lot of the DC characters are in Joker Rising. They're just not as you would see them. Croc is not Croc. Croc is just another low-level gangster that happens to be working with Cyrus. Harley Quinn is not... She is Harleen Quinzel. She's Harley Quinn. But she's not a psychiatrist. She's not a doctor. She's a hooker that Cyrus falls in love with. But the cool thing about the movie is it does touch on, where Cyrus gets his purple suit, how he got the Glasgow smile. If you don't know what that is, it's the scars. It's called a Glasgow smile. But it touches on that, and it touches on what, Cyrus's breaking point was that turned him into the Joker per se. And Clown Prince, aka Joker Rising 2, done in 2019, was an amazing, amazing sequel. And Dylan Hobbs actually gets to portray the Joker at that point, not just Cyrus and then becoming the Joker towards the end, but the actual Joker throughout the course of the film. And I gotta tell you, Dylan Hobbs doesn't do a bad job as a Joker. He doesn't try to imitate Heath Ledger or Jack Nicholson or anybody else that had, a Mark Hamill, for instance. He doesn't try to imitate, per se, any of those Jokers. He kind of tries to make it his own thing. Different makeup, he still has the scars, green hair, but, he's got a good laugh and a good giggle, but he doesn't really try to be any of those things. He does try to portray what we see as the Joker, the slightly high-pitched voice, the laugh, but he really does try to make it his own, and he's really got a lot of potential to be a very good character actor with something like that. Did a really, really good job. But man, The Clown Prince, that's a really good movie, and that even dives deeper into the origin of Joker, looking at Cyrus's childhood and how he was already, a broken child from a broken home. And it's just how people can become broken and mentally, physically. It's a really well written thing. And the cool thing about, those two movies is that, again, they were both done very low budget, like $3,000. They were filmed, I think the first one took like 8 days to film, and then Clown Prince was like 9 days. But they're both really well done. And the cool thing is with fan films is in these two cases, obviously they didn't stick to the source material. They came up with their own source material, trying to dive into the origin story of the Joker. But when you have stuff that's low budget like that, there's a lot more dialogue that can be put into the movie to really make a good, clear story as to what's going on. And the other thing too, man, when stuff like this is done with low budget, props to the fans for making these fan films. A lot of effort goes into making something like these things happen on a $3,000 budget. I mean, really, if you sit back and watch it, it's an hour-and-a-half movie. It's full-blown, full-motion picture. It didn't get distributed by Sony or anything like that, but shit, you can look them up on IMDb, the Internet Movie Database. That's good enough for me. You've made the IMDb. You've got 5 million views on YouTube, or in the case of Kung Fury, you've got 47 million views. But props to all of the people involved in any of these films, not to mention the thousands and thousands of other films out there. I've seen Predator fan films. I've seen films on the Red Hood. I've seen films on Star Wars. There's countless Star Wars fan films out there. In fact, the first fan film I ever watched was RVD2, which was Ryan versus Dorkman 2, which wasn't anything but like a 10-minute lightsaber battle in an old Frito-Lay factory. And it was probably one of the best things I ever saw. It was a great lightsaber battle. It was awesome. And they did an amazing job with that. And it just goes to show how much you can do with so little. So props to everybody involved in all of these movies. Guys, please check these out. These are totally worth the watch. They're all on YouTube. They're easy to look up. Joker Rising, Kung Fury, Static Shock fan film. You won't be disappointed, especially with Kung Fury and The Clown Prince. Those two, by far, awesome. But check them out. And if you could, like, subscribe, and comment to my YouTube channel. Feel free to please share the video, make the rounds. Guys, keep on watching, and let's just keep our minds off of all the unnecessary crap that's out there going on, man. And politics is trash, and the world's going to hell in a handbasket. But let's just watch. That's what you need to watch. You need to watch Kung Fury. You need some mindless bullshit right now, and that Kung Fury is the way to go. So, guys, like, subscribe, and comment to the YouTube channel. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you've seen any of these things, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.